Welcome back to the first episode of Self-Made, The Makings of Me. I'm Cleveland Baffert, your host, and I'm happy that you guys can join me once again. Before I begin sharing with you guys my life story, I kind of want to set it up on the structure of how I want to present my life story in the various phases. I have decided to tell my story in decade blocks, in 10-year increments. I think it will allow me more flexibility in sharing that story. I'm 63 years old, so that'll allow for a lot of content as well, and I can focus and narrow down within a certain period where my mind won't be going everywhere. So I hope that the structure that I've decided to use, that I've chosen, will benefit the audience the most, in my humble opinion. To begin, I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania, and pretty much raised the first 7 years of my life in Buffalo, New York. The only reason I was born in Erie is because my mother was visiting her sister in Erie when her water broke. Thus, I was born in Erie, yet I was raised the first 7 years in Buffalo. Erie is like right on the southwest, literally on the southwest border of New York on Lake Erie. Buffalo's on Lake Erie, Erie is on Lake Erie, and they both pretty much, it's probably about a 45-minute drive from Buffalo to Erie, I would say, somewhere in that time frame. But anyway, that's where I was born at. I would like to say that these first 7 years of my life, I'll say it was the best years of my life, really. It was definitely the most happiest times of my life. And the reason being, I guess, is because my mother was very, very open about allowing the children to explore the world at a very young age. And I'm just putting that nicely. I would kind of explain it a little more in a more serious a little later. But I was at home with my sibling, my brother, my sister, and my stepbrother, who was 5 years older than I. My mother had 9 children, and my siblings were the last 3 of the 9. I'm the oldest, being the 7th, and my sister, then my little brother. But my stepbrother, he was the youngest of the previous 6. He was 5 years older than I. And as I can recall, for the most of my childhood, my stepbrother was the one that pretty much raised me, due to the neglectful and abandonment behavior of my mother, going about her business, doing what she was doing away from the home. I can recall my older brother really was the one that was the primary person around me during the day. And he was the one that took me to school, picked me up from school. In the summertime, I hung out with him, went everywhere where he went. And to be truthful about it, Like I very vaguely remember my siblings. Ain't that something? I mean, I have, fleeting thoughts here and there, seeing them here and there, but, as a constant, I don't have a memory of a constant of my brother and my sister. They was younger than I. Maybe my aunties or something was, taking care of them while my mother was doing her bidding, if you will. And so I'm kind of, lost in that area. It's a reality that I have to deal with. But I do vividly remember the relationship between my older brother and I. He took me everywhere he went. I loved him. He protected me. He fed me. He took me on adventures. I can recall being a little child, 1 or 2 years old, 3 years old, him taking me to the grocery stores and putting food up under my little clothes. And he put me in a basket, putting food up my clothes, then, walking me out the store. And, I can remember things like that and other little mischievous things we've done, along the way. In our lifetime in those first 7 years. So you got to remember now, if I was 2 or 3 years old, that means my brother was 7 or 8, raising me. 7 or 8, starting out. Because he's the one that I have the most vivid memory of being connected to at that early age in my life. The times that my mother was there, it was all love, There was never any consequences for the things that we done. Because she was never there. We never really got caught doing anything. So no one could really, come over and say, hey, your children's doing this, they're doing these mischievous things. It was never that serious. But I remember that. So him being like 7 or 8 years old, starting out raising me at 2 or 3, and then me leaving around 7 years old, meaning he was 12. So there came a time when my mother decided to split ways with my father and decided to take me down south to Memphis, Tennessee to live with my grandmother and father on my father's side. Now, mind you, this was a very serious culture shock. Moving from Buffalo, New York, which was like in a middle-class neighborhood, to an impoverished, very poor neighborhood in the South, and not knowing anyone, never have met any one of the family members before in my entire life. So I'm going through that relational shock, then the cultural shock of the environment, and it was just very, very unsettling for a young child. But I can remember when my mother was taking me down there on a Greyhound, that I was constantly asking her, how long are we going to be down there? She said, oh, we're just going to visit a couple of days, Okay. But I just kept asking her, because in my young 7-year-old mind, them suitcases you packed up wasn't indicative of 2 days. It looked like it was going to be a pretty long stay. That's why I kept asking, but she just kept, telling me it was a couple of days, so I believed her, so I let it go, So we get to Memphis,